Greetings, respected viewers. I'm George from Ireland. Here I am in front of Wilderness House in Hampton Court, the southwest edge of London. So Wilderness House is best known for having been the residence of Lancelot Brown. So he's better known as Capability Brown. So he's born in Northumberland, that's the northeast corner of England, in a small hamlet. And they were lower middle class because his father owned a horse. And of course, if you owned any nag back then, you're better off than most people. They're called yeomanry, those sort of people who owned at least one horse. So he was literate, which a lot of people were not. He started working for the local grandee, gardening, and he had quite a green thumb, managed to impress him, and he prospered in that trade. And he came to southern England where most of the money was. He worked for Lord Cobham, who owned Stowe House, which is just a few miles north of Buckingham, and it's now Stowe School. Began reworking the landscape there. So he would dig trenches, he would create hillocks and things like that. He would plant trees here and there. And he got this name Capability Brown, not because of his incredible aptitude for gardening, though he did have that. It was when he saw a piece of land, he would say it had capabilities, or he'd now say potential. He could see a way to reshape it and make it more picturesque. So he was nothing if not ambitious. He was very industrious and diligent, and he drove his labourers very hard. He had to organise it, wasn't digging the earth himself so much, piling it up here and there, sketching it out where the herbaceous borders were going to be and where they'd plant everything. That was a Capability Brown. So in 1764 he was hired by His Britannic Majesty to be the chief gardener at Hampton Court Palace, and just over the wall behind that house is Hampton Court Palace with its enormous gardens and with its maze there of bushes. So he was great at topiary as well. So he became a very wealthy man. He'd lived in Hammersmith and Chiswick as well, and he was hired out. So many notables of the time hired his services to remake their gardens in Alnwick and various other places. So he also invented the ha-ha. It was very popular to have deer in your garden then of your stately home. So the trouble about deer is they'd come right up to the house and be leaving their scat around the house, and they'd be chewing the leaves of flowers and so forth. So people didn't want that. So how are you going to prevent this? Well, he said what you do is you dig a trench. The trench would be a bit unsightly. We also want to maintain the illusion that the deer are wandering freely. Okay, so there was a way to do both of this: prevent them leaving their droppings by the house and ruining the flower bed, but also not make it obvious that you were trapping them or keeping them from escaping or keeping them coming too close to the house. So you dig a trench called a ha-ha, and the house usually at the top of the hill. Because of the angle, you couldn't see the trench. It had to be wide enough and deep enough such that the deer couldn't leap over it or couldn't go down into it and then jump up or climb up the bank, but not so wide that you'd see it from the house because of the angle. So that was the ha-ha. So ha-ha as in it's a joke because you think that the deer are not coming close to the house because they're just not inclined to. What you don't realise is they're unable to because of that deep trench. Or you could have one at the edge of your property as well to prevent them escaping rather than have a fence. And you can see one in Richmond actually at the old Deer Park. So that's what a ha-ha is. He was hired by His Grace the Duke of Marlborough to rework the gardens of Blenheim Palace, about 10 miles north of Oxford, famously the birthplace of Winston Churchill. And he laid out the trees there in battle array, as in redolent of the Battle of Blenheim in the early 18th century, fought in Germany against the French and Bavarians, part of the War of Spanish Succession. So the clumps of trees, they represent troop formations. They're not there laid out randomly. Anyway, so that's enough about Lancelot Capability Brown. I remember his name obviously echoes down the centuries, and in the late 90s, the Conservative and Unionist Party, they used this as part of a pun to try to wreck the reputation of the Chancellor Exchequer, Gordon Brown calling him Culpability Brown. It didn't quite catch on, actually. But around about 2008, time of the credit crunch, perhaps people would have believed that actually that was an apt sobriquet for him. All right, so I'm gonna ring off now. So please follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. I've got to start posting on Twitter and Instagram. Not terribly diligent about it, and yes, I've been very dilatory updating my things, but I shall try and put things on there journally. But I don't want to just say anything that's too quotidian. It's obviously got to be worth listening to. And write to me, book me for online lessons in history, English literature, geography, politics, international relations, religious studies, French, law, linguistics, or get me to translate documents, edit documents. I can translate from French, Spanish, Italian, Romanian, German, and Russian, and hire me as your tour guide in London. All right, so that's enough from Hampton Court Palace. You're getting a little bit of an idea of just how big it is. That's just one wall of it. I'll switch it off now.